You're listening to the Better for America podcast, presented by AMAC, the Association of Mature American Citizens.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rebecca Weber, and this is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. And with us today is Nick Loeb. He's a writer, producer, and director. And he began his career at Universal Studios. He learned about mergers and acquisitions and corporate development, and then in motion picture finance. He went on to work on his first feature film, which was Primary Colors. That was directed by Mike Nichols, starring John Travolta. And Mr. Loeb began the international production company producing The Smokers in 2000 with executive producer Quincy Jones. Nick worked on several films over the last 18 years with stars like Bruce Willis, Billy Bob Thornton, Kathy Bates, Gerard Butler, and many others. I am so excited to have Nick here with us because of the film that he co-wrote and co-directed with Kathy Allen. This is a controversial film, Roe v. Wade, although I'll tell you why I don't think it's very controversial at all. I think it's really about getting the truth out there. The film, I'm sure, has been the subject of many headlines over the past couple of years. So we're going to ask Nick a little bit about that and the conservative cast and the mystery really surrounding the plot. The story, Roe v. Wade, follows the landmark 1973 Supreme Court decision that guaranteed a woman's right to abortion. And Nick Loeb stars. He's the lead role. He plays the real-life Dr. Bernard Nathanson, who is a prominent abortion doctor, and he actually had a change of heart later in his career. Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. Our members are going to love hearing from you.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having me. I really, really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. So I want to ask you first, why did you want to do this film, Roe v. Wade? Was it your personal experience? What influenced your decision, Nick, to produce this film?
Well, I mean, I've been in Hollywood for a long time. We make movies on everything. I really couldn't believe no one had made the movie on the most famous court case in American history. I mean, there've been a lot of documentaries out there, but no one had actually made it, a feature narrative. There was a made-for-TV movie years ago, but it really addressed only really one of the characters who wasn't even involved barely in the case. And no one had made a comprehensive movie on how it came to be and then how it was decided. I was sort of shocked by that. When I sort of started researching it, I realized why that movie was never made, because the real true story of Roe v. Wade is not a liberal story.
Yeah, that is so interesting. I tell you, there were so many eye-opening scenes really in this film. And you've said that this is a pro-life film based on facts. I agree. I saw it actually on Mother's Day with my niece and my nephew. It's not a religious or preachy type of movie. This is a film that's actually told through the eyes of Dr. Bernard Nathanson. And this is a man who performed over 70,000 abortions. So why did you want to play Dr. Bernard Nathanson? I thought you did a fantastic job. But what an interesting role for you to play. Tell us a little bit about your decision to play
I
him.
appreciate that. Well, there were many people involved in the Roe case and how it was decided. And we picked Bernard, or we like to call him Bernie, to play the lead, or really to be the narrator of the story, because we tried to come up and show both sides. And he was the one person who was really truly involved, who was on both sides of the argument. He was pro-life, he was pro-choice. And for me, I went through a transition myself. I think a lot of Americans do. I think especially people who grew up maybe in more liberal areas, or the Northeast or the West Coast, may have a change of heart. They learn one thing when they're younger and they change when they're older. And so because I had that transition in my life as well, I thought Bernard was an incredible character that I was going to be able to play. So for multiple reasons, I played him, and we utilized him to tell the story. And plus, he wrote a lot of books on the subject matter of Roe, and he came out and he admitted everything they did to get it there. So all the lies and the manipulation and the deceit, he came out and admitted that he was involved in all of that.
Yeah, you did a fantastic job really uncovering that. And this is what I found really interesting. So I'm sitting with my 17-year-old niece, and I had talked to her prior to playing the movie, and I said, what do you know about abortion? And she had no idea that abortion was the killing of a human life. She literally said, I thought it was a clump of cells, and she was shocked. And she did cry intermittently throughout the film. And then she said just last night to me, why is it still legal? In other words, it's as if people are just shielding themselves from knowing the truth, and the extreme left that want to keep abortion um, not only legal, but they want want government to pay for it and to fund it and that sort of thing. Why would they want average people to really know the horror behind it? So I want to applaud you for your courage, because I think it's just extremely courageous, and you've changed the mind of an 18-year-old girl, and potentially could be saving lives, in my opinion, because that's the profound impact that this film can have. You have a great cast, Nick, some of whom are very well-known conservatives. I just wanted you to share with us how you assembled your cast, and was there any pushback due to the controversy? In other words, were people like John Voight saying, "Oh, I don't know if I want to participate"? And Alveda King, she had a small piece in that film. Tell us about your cast and how you were able to assemble such a great cast.
Yeah, we had a lot of pushbacks on every area, probably except for casting. Um, I think why we were so unlike most, I like to say maybe faith or Christian Catholic type films, which is really, I say faith friendly. We're sort of not faith based, and we were able to assemble this cast because although we're in that genre, it wasn't a Christian movie, it wasn't a Catholic movie, it wasn't a religious film, and it was an historical piece and based around such a famous case, and actors love to, and we knew this, actors love to play real life roles. I mean, getting to play a president or a war hero or a Supreme Court justice is an honor for a lot of actors, especially if those roles were written well. And I've never seen in film where Supreme Court justices have actually been portrayed in depth. And I think this was something really interesting that the actors were able to sink their teeth into. So when we approached, whether it was John Voight, or the audience members may know Steve Gutenberg from Police Academy, or John Schneider from Dukes of Hazzard, or Corbin Burns from LA Law, and go on and on. These guys have been, solid guys in, 40, 50 years working in the business. They read these roles and they go, I get to play this Supreme, Justice Byron White, or Chief Justice Rehnquist, or Justice Powell. And, when these guys grew up, these were famous names, no different than than imagine someone gets to play John Roberts today, And
Right.
so, for an actor, I think, other than playing, some insignificant character that no one ever heard of, I think this is the writing and the roles is really what was able to get our the cast that we got, and that's why we're so lucky to get the cast.
Yeah, I thought you did an incredible job really giving us an inside look at how the Supreme Court operates, because as you said, most people aren't privy to that, and they're always silent, right? When we do see them, they don't have much to say. When we get glimpses of them when they're sitting at the State of the Union address, that kind of a thing. So I thought it was such an eye opener. There was a part of the film where we discover that two of the sitting justices on the decision actually had immediate family members working or volunteering for Planned Parenthood. And you have to wonder, why didn't they recuse themselves, right? I mean, I think that was the question I really asked myself.
Not only did one not recuse himself, he actually pushed the case. So people don't understand, not everybody gets to go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court essentially has a committee, and they decide which cases they're going to hear. One of the justices whose wife worked for Planned Parenthood, he's the one who actually brought the case. So let's hear this case. So it was more than just, not even recusing yourself, going out and trying to find a case because they cared so much about the issue.
Yeah,
Which is another
I did
job.
not know that. Yeah, that those are facts that have been, the public has not been aware of these things. What a great thing that you're revealing this. And I want to share a scene with those watching, because I thought you did a great job showing how much manipulation was going on to make abortion legal, and the media seemed to really helped the pro-choice movement a lot. So the following clip that we're going to show, it actually shows you playing Dr. Bernard Nathanson and Larry later discussing how they completely lied to the media and how the media ran with the stories anyway. So let's take a look at this.
And that's how I became a published author.
That's so far out.
Yeah, Larry here changed the laws in half the country single-handedly.
Bernie and I own most of the clinics in New York.
Oh my God, that's sick. And how'd you do that?
We control the media.
Oh, get real.
We do. They write whatever we tell them. This one time, we got the New York Times to publish a poll on how many doctors were in favor of abortion.
Yeah, we said 87% sounded good. Wait. How many doctors again was that out of, Larry?
About 40,000, I think.
Can you believe they printed that?
And then we got them to say that 60% of Americans favored abortion.
Why didn't you guys just do a real poll?
Because if a real poll was taken, nowhere near 60% of Americans favored abortion. So we made it up, and the media didn't even question it. This is a tactic of the self-fulfilling lie. You see, few people care to be in the minority.
There's nowhere near 500,000 women having back alley abortions.
So, Nick, tell us about that clip. I mean, some things never change, right? The media still to this day does play a role in manipulating narratives. Shocking for me to understand how easy it was for these two men to really dominate and be so much behind the passing of the legislation. All of this, how did you uncover those kinds of conversations that were had and the information? What kind of research went into fact
Just from that, I
checking?
mean, we read all the, we read all the books written, in that scene particularly. Bernard and Larry literally admitted. I mean, Larry came out, he never converted, but he came out and bragged in books and articles about what he did and how he got things done. And Bernard came in. I mean, all those facts when I listed, Newsweek and the actual dates and months, I didn't make those months and dates up. Those were the actual months that we had planted stories in those magazines. And I think, back then, let's imagine, who knows if any of the news was real back then. We didn't have podcasts. We didn't have Facebook, Twitter to call out the other side. I mean, it was really what, 3 news sources, right? ABC, NBC, and CBS.
Right.
And that was it. And it was probably so much easier to manipulate the media back then. And they would do whatever you told them, at least today. And now today we're covering all this tremendous fake news because we have the other side. I can only imagine how much more rampant it was, back in the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s.
Yeah. I'm so glad that we were able, AMAC that is, thanks to you, to get the film out in front of our AMAC members, because today, we're really seeing and we're feeling the silencing of conservatives. Do you think that this film is suffering some degree of censorship? And tell us about how people can get to watch.
You have no idea. You have no idea. I mean,
I can imagine.
So I'll give you a couple examples. We came out on Amazon the first day. We were supposed to launch. In Amazon, we literally, the only way you could find it on Amazon is if you actually had a link. It wasn't until I went on Fox News and complained about it. Within like 3 hours of my Fox News interview, they finally put it up there. AT&T, which owns DirecTV and a massive contributor, Planned Parenthood, literally you can only find it on DirecTV or AT&T Uverse if you actually type in the name of the movie and spell it correctly. If you spell it incorrectly, you won't even find the movie. They constantly have told us that we're in new releases, but we're not. And I got to read for this is something I've never seen in my 20 years in filmmaking ever. So Comcast Xfinity, a lot of these things have parental guides. And the parental guides are supposed to tell you about sex and violence and all of those things.
Right.
About the rating. I have never seen this in a parental guide. Mediocre drama is heavily biased and emotionally manipulative. The parental guide is supposed to talk about sex and violence, not about emotionality. They're also not supposed to review the film and call it mediocre. It goes on to say, in the parental guide, parents need to know that Roe v. Wade is a drama that makes no attempt to hide its anti-abortion stance or to explore the issue with any kind of balance. And it goes on and on. This is a review, not a parental guide.
Right.
And the platforms are coming out there that are putting it out there. Either they're hiding it or they're just making up their own opinion and giving you reviews as part of a parental guide. It's the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. And they've been trying to suppress the film. It's just amazing.
Do you feel, Nick, do you feel like you've been ostracized at all or treated differently? You know, are you made to feel an outsider in a sense because you're pushing this film, or do you feel that
I mean, of course,
still maintain
specifically, I mean, you know, I'm being pro-life here now. I mean, especially if you're from New York, or you live in Florida, or you work in California.
I'm in New York, yeah.
Completely ostracized. I mean, listen, a lot of people come up and complain, oh, you can't be conservative in Hollywood, and you can't be conservative in Hollywood. I tell people that's actually not true. There's a lot of working conservatives in Hollywood. There's only two things you can't be in Hollywood: pro-Trump and pro-life. And that's really, if you're pro-life today in this country, it is and you stand up for it in the way that I did, and then many do. You're completely ostracized by those communities. But
I'm sorry.
But that you're welcomed with open arms in communities like yours and in the middle of the country.
Yeah, I find it really, if something else that, like, take for example, my niece, 18. There's one scene where you show a baby or parts of, and I think it's just very, very quick, and that had tremendous, profound impact on her because she did not believe until she watched the movie and we discussed it. She did not believe that abortion, especially at 3 months or 4 months, was the taking of a human life. She really didn't believe that those body parts were formed. And I find that so hard to believe that today, in the year 2021, with everything available at people's fingertips, with internet searching, I mean, kids can jump on their phones and watch porn like that, right? Sadly, there's so much information at people's disposal, but this very act of taking a human life, even in the 7th or 8th or 9th month, let's say, none of that is ever spoken about, shared. There's little to no engagement, and so it's got to start in the home. I try to.
Well, no, it's interesting that you bring this point up. So if you look at actually any of the research, and thank God for the internet today, because maybe your daughter's the exception, but she's changing. Youth today, although they're becoming more socially progressive in every single way, with the exception of abortion, the youth today coming out of university is training more pro-life than they ever have before in history. And the reason that is because of what you just said. They can Google it. And you have people Googling today what an abortion is. And they're seeing, I didn't have this growing up, that a baby is sucking its thumb in the first trimester, hands, arms, mouth in the first 2 months. And they're realizing, oh my God, it's a human being. I was taught it was just a clump of cells in a gabagool.
Sure.
So I thought, what was wrong with an abortion? And so I used to always be pro-choice. But the internet today has actually changed that. And this is one of the reasons I think that we'll win this war, win this battle. Because
I hope
the trend of the youth is going in that generation. What's stopping it today, unfortunately, is our generation. Because we aren't Googling it, we aren't looking at it. And we're so, if we've grown up being pro-choice, we're so dogmatic in our views, it's hard to change that instead of evolving with that. And so I do have a lot of hope for the future.
I do too, and I love to hear you say that. But I just find it strange how a video like the sad killing, terrible killing of George Floyd, that went viral, right? But millions of young women will never see the horror of abortion, and I think that it ought to be introduced in schools. And there's a lot that people can do, starting in the family. So again, I think that it took a lot of courage for you to say, let's get this done. What was your ultimate goal in producing the movie, and how, I want to go back to how people can watch the movie, but tell me, ultimately, was it to educate and get the truth out there?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was all of the above. I mean, I thought, I like to say Roe v. Wade is the court case that everyone's heard of, but nobody knows anything about. And I didn't even know anything about it before I got involved. And I'm sure you didn't when you saw the movie. You learned so many new things. I could have so many people who've been in the movement for 40, 50 years be like, Nick, we learned so much in this film. And I think part of it was we talk about this every couple of years. There's always this discussion on overturning Roe and the Supreme Court justices. And I think people needed to understand what it was really about. That was, one of the objectives. And I think from an intellectual perspective, that was the objective. From an emotional perspective, I really wanted people to understand that life begins at conception, regardless of where they fall down in the opinion, right? If they come away from the film saying, you know what, I'm still pro choice, but now I understand that there's a baby there. Because I think there's a fringe element in our country today that has taken abortion too lightly. They've started organizations like Start Your Abortion, or people going out there excited to have their third or fourth abortion, and not look at the reality that it's a human being. And I think if today we can at least have everybody see, okay, this is a tough, difficult decision for a woman, and it really is a human being, at least it won't be taken lightly. And to change hearts and minds. And I think we see that today in clinics that require women to have sonograms before abortions. I mean, 80% of them today change their minds and they will go through the abortion. And so I think if the film can do that and reach those people, that was sort of my ultimate goal.
It's wonderful. And I love talking with you as a pro-life man because I think that men can play a huge role in shifting, as you said, changing the hearts and minds of people. I think that women ultimately suffer so much emotional trauma after an abortion. I have many, friends and know many people that have sadly had to make that decision. And I've seen the regret and the if only I had known then what I know today. And so here at AMAC, we just want to encourage people that there's a lot of resources. We have a lot of information on our website. Matter of fact, I spoke with Lila Rose from Live Action just last week, and she's got such great content as well.
You should
How
tell
can
Lila to talk and post about our film. They haven't done anything on our film.
I will definitely reach out to her. I actually have I'm in communication with her, so I will do that for sure because I think that she would entirely embrace this and get behind it. Um, who helped you form your conservative views, Nick? How did that happen? I mean, it's unusual.
I think that my views morphed over time. I grew up very liberal. I mean, my father he called himself a Rockefeller Republican, so he was sort of a very moderate Republican and served as a U.S. ambassador to Denmark. But I really grew up in liberal schools, and I think it was Churchill said, if you're liberal and if you're young and you're not liberal, you have no heart, and if you're old and you're not conservative, you have no brains. And I think so. And I just through progression in life, living around, going through, there was no one person who had any sort of impact. It was sort of a amalgamation of things. But to address your previous comment, talking about men, I think it's very difficult today. Liberals shut down men who want to talk about abortion because it's a woman's body, it's a woman's right issue, so men shouldn't talk about that, which I find hypocritical because men want to be women to play women's sports. They can do that, and that's okay, but we can't talk about abortion. So I think it's very challenging for men. And when you talk about being ostracized, you're even more so when you're a man discussing the topic of life.
Yeah. I am often reminded of Mother Teresa, and I think a lot of people are. She was just a lovely woman who saw abortion and the horrors of it. And so I just want to read a quick quote to those listening. She said, "The abortion has become the greatest destroyer of peace because it destroys two lives, the life of the child and the conscience of the mother." And so she said, "Let us thank our parents for wanting us, for loving us, for giving us the joy of living, because each one of us is priceless to God himself." And so again, I applaud you for your courage, Nick. I want to encourage everybody who's listening, absolutely watch this movie, Roe v. Wade.
Yeah, Amazon, you can spend on Amazon. You can find it on Google Play, on iTunes, cable, satellite, whether you have Comcast, DirecTV, Dish, Spectrum. Google it. You can find it. DVD,
Excellent.
Amazon, Walmart, Target. It's everywhere.
That is fabulous. And Nick, where do you go from here? What's your next film? Anything lined up?
I'm putting together my next film now, which is it's another historical piece, but it's an action thriller this time. It's this true story of a slave recruited by George Washington to spy on the British during the American Revolution, and the slave helps him and gets him information that helps Washington win the war. And this guy's story has been completely left out of history.
Wow, I can't.
Incredible story. Yeah, and it's an incredible story of the slave named James Armistead Lafayette, which anybody can Google. And he was so instrumental in winning the American Revolution. It was shocking to find out that I didn't know anything about him, and a lot of people I've talked to don't know anything about him. So we're putting that together now.
That's great. Oh, that is fantastic. I will absolutely have to have you back, and we'll definitely promote that, because we are loving that, to hear more and more about history and the stories that are the untold stories, the good stories. Yeah. Nick, thank you so much for joining us today. It was really a pleasure to see you. You're just a great guy, and this is a phenomenal movie that everyone needs to watch. So be sure to check out Roe v. Wade. Nick Loeb, thank you for being with us today. And for all of you listening out there, this is your AMAC podcast, Better for America. And we look forward to having you back with us again next time. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening to the Better for America podcast. To learn more about AMAC and all it has to offer, visit us at www.amac.us.